Anya was having a meltdown at the idea of leaving her little village. She hadn't told me that she wanted to leave the village, but I knew. I made plans for it to happen. We have a unique relationship, Anya and I. I'm her master and she my apprentice. Although I'd never let her know that. To her, I'm her Auntie Em. She was kicking the doors down of her dad's little cottage one day, shouting nasty things at him, when all of a sudden he opened her bedroom window, threw out a bag of her clothes, shouting at her to never come back. Oh, she was beside herself. She couldn't cope. She couldn't cope with that rejection of her only family member, just leaving her. Oh, my heart sunk. Picked up her bags, led her down the street to a spot where we like to sit that overlooks the sea. Oh, it was a beautiful summer evening. Around 9 p.m, the sun had just begun to set, cascading pink skies that stretched over the horizon. Oh, I'd not seen a sunset like that in a long time. There was only a faint breeze as it brushed against the rocks that lay below. We sat in silence and listened to the sea gently pushing itself against the shore and repeating its calming rhythms. I took Anya's hand and asked if she'd like to go on an adventure. She looked up at me with big swollen eyes and nodded. We decided it would be best to take a pilgrimage along the coastal paths and finish when we felt connected with the place. Our promise to one another was that we would be honest with ourselves on the journey and look within to what our heart and soul desired. I told her the journey would be complicated and challenging at times. Sometimes our bodies and minds lie to us and we'll always scream out to take the easy option. The real test would be if she could endure the difficulties. I had made this journey before, long before I had met Anya, back when I was a very different person. However, I had not done this journey with someone else, especially with a woman as colourful as Anya is. Seems I like a challenge. I wrote a diary to hand over to Anya when it was time to part. Let's see. Here we go. Day 1. Anya was a handful. She didn't stop complaining the whole time, bad-mouthing her father and telling me that he would regret his actions. She was going for revenge. She struck random objects with sticks until they broke into 2. Day 2. Anya calmed a bit once we got a routine for rest breaks, food, and where we would camp for the night. She's learning how to communicate. Day 4. Oh, we walked amongst the trees. The sun was too hot and was making Anya agitated. We shared stories of our childhood memories and learning to swim and climbing the tallest trees. Anya helped me realize that the love I thought I never felt was, in fact, there, just shown differently. We weren't talking about love, but relationships with past people. I went to sleep very grateful for this experience. And so we journeyed for 30 days. And Anya would tend to the sores on my feet and cook. And I would, seems to have helped her keep her emotions in check. Some days were better than others. There was progress. I can't sleep, she says, as we were just laid on our makeshift beds, old yoga mats and hand crocheted blankets. How can you not sleep, Anya? All you've done today is moan about how tired you are, and we've been walking for miles. Yeah, I know, it's just my mind's racing and I can't stop thinking about everything. Can you tell me a story? A story, I said. What kind of story? An adventure one where you're in it. And so I thought about it. And then I thought, now was probably the best time and most important story to find out how I came to be in her life. So I picked up my book, used the campfire as light. Are you ready? Yeah? Go for it. Okay. A Hero's Journey. She looked up at me, her face screwed up as the rain bounced angrily off her pale, freckled skin, raindrops darting into her eyes. She tried to hold my gaze before being blinded by the icy drops. I couldn't tell if she was crying. Her back was hunched over. She looked like a defeated warrior as she rested on the moss-covered stone. I say rest. She was slumped over the stone, holding on to what I thought was a stick. I stood there watching and observing. She looked different, and I had never seen anyone quite like her. Her hair was long, tangled, black curls, and I bet you wanted to sort her hair out. Yeah, I suppose I did. She was breathing heavily. Why? Well, I will tell you in a second. Had she been fighting? Was she a warrior? Do you want me to tell you this story or not? Yeah, sorry, go on. Okay, so she was slumped with her stick, staff, whatever you want to call it, and she's breathing heavily, and she has this massive, long brown cloak on that covers her whole body. It's huge. It drapes over the stone and trails across the rocky terrain. I moved closer to look at this cloak. It was fluffy. Perhaps alpaca fur. I was just about to touch it when she spun around suddenly. I took a step back. She looked scared. Her eyes told a million stories of the pain and hurts she had lived through. She wasn't so out of breath now and could hold my gaze as the icy rain turned into silent snowflakes, softening everything around us. I wanted to ask who she was and where she had come from, but all I could do was stand there and look into her eyes. They were amber in colour, so bright and clear that I could see the reflection of myself and then the fire. But there was no fire around us. I looked to see if anyone else was around. The situation was unnerving but enticing. She stood up. She towered over me and gently took my hand. Which hand? Left or right? My right hand. Good. Going for the left wouldn't make sense. She gently took my right hand. Are you sure you want this story? Yes! Okay. She gently picked up my right hand and brought it towards her chest. Her hands are much bigger than mine. Everything about her is bigger, but her hands are warm. So warm that it's uncomfortable. I try to take my hand back and she holds my hand tightly. The heat is unbearable. It feels like my hand is on fire. I plead with her to let my hand go, and her grip gets tighter and tighter until I find myself on one knee, pleading with her. desperate to have my hand back. I worry about life without a hand until I realize it might not just be my hand. It could be my life that is about to end. I looked back at her eyes staring into mine. I was transfixed. The fire reflection was roaring. It looked like she had fire in her eyes. I tried to call out, and nothing came out of my mouth. It felt like time stood still. She shouted at me. I don't know what she said to me at that point. It was of another language. However, it cut through my terror that I was looking at death face on. Listen, watch, learn. And just like that, the fire went from her eyes as the colours swirled from reds and oranges and yellows into a cloudy light brown. She released her grip, and I yanked my hand away from her quickly. My fingers curled into a fist. I was shaking, scared that my hand would be so severely burnt that I would never be able to work again. Then she spoke in a whisper. Open your hand. I turned my hand around, fist facing upwards, and I saw a tiny speckle of light coming from the cracks of my fingers. Slowly, I uncurled my fingers. They were not burned. But the light, it was a bright white light that became so intense that I couldn't look at it. I heard an ear-piercing pitch and then nothing. There was darkness all around. I was sure I had died this time. I reflected. Is this what death is? An abyss of nothingness. No great flashbacks of my life's memories or smiles of loved ones. Nothing. I woke up to the odd sensation of my hair dangling, swishing from side to side. Oh, that's comfortable. Was I being carried? I felt like I was floating. I was warm and cozy against some fur. Then it dawned on me that the girl was carrying me somewhere. I opened my eyes briefly and saw the tips of evergreen trees. She looked down at me and smiled. My eyes must have closed again because I was in the comfiest bed I had ever known when I woke up. I felt like I was sleeping on air. I slowly peeled my eyes open, unsure if I wanted to know where I was. I tried to figure out the danger that lay before me whilst remembering what had happened. That's when I realized I was in the forbidden territory. A place where we have been taught to believe is the most dangerous place of our kind. A place that swallows you up whole, and once entered, you are never to return or be seen again. I hadn't known anyone setting foot into the forbidden territory. Not in my lifetime. But I had heard stories from my granddad around the dinner table. I thought they were a myth to keep me scared so I wouldn't be so careless on my adventures. At this point, I wished I had listened to my granddad more. He might have given me some advice on how to deal with this world I found myself in. The air was sticky and pungent. It smelled like damp earth and sage. I immediately closed my eyes to give myself more time to think as I felt the room. I was warm. I couldn't feel the icy cold snow anymore. I could hear the fire crackling lightly to the right of me. Oh, the comfort I felt was unlike anything I had experienced. I heard some little footsteps pottering behind my head, so I knew whatever I was lying on was not placed behind a wall. There was space, perhaps a door I could escape through. I could feel the presence of whatever it was tiptoeing around my head. It had a motherly presence. Maybe because my forehead was being dabbed with a cool, damp cloth. It made me think of my mother. I missed her greatly. Her gentle smile whenever she would see me. I missed her look of love, her presence. My memories were disrupted by the further sounds of footsteps outside the room. Heavy clumping. Boots or something being thrown to the ground. There was a door behind me. "Has she woken yet?" said the voice from another room. Not yet," she said, the sweet woman, as she finished dabbing my forehead. "Let me know when she wakes. We need to get a move on." "I will. Go prepare," she ordered. Prepare. The word terrified me. Prepare for what? My mind raced, imagining all sorts of horrific things they could be preparing for. Why had I lost all memories of my granddad's tales? My eyes must have moved as the woman whispered in my ear, "I know you're awake, Sunbeam." Sunbeam. That is what my mother used to call me. Why did this woman bring back memories of my mother? You can open your eyes now. I had no idea what to do. Either keep my eyes shut or open them and face this new journey ahead of me. I had to be brave. I had to be ready to fight. Fight what? I didn't know, but the time was now. My eyes flipped open and I shot up onto my feet, finding myself at the foot of the bed. I was in a small, dark room. The ceiling was low and the walls were dark and not stone. I don't know what they were made of, but I wondered if I was underground. The woman stood in front of the door, hands clasped together with a slight smile. She looked at me and nodded. "Follow me," she said, turned around and glided out the door. I had to check her feet because the way she moved was more like floating. I peered around the bed to see her leave the room, but couldn't see any feet because her robe was too long. I quickly picked up a lantern and lit it before following this ethereal woman. Not the most ideal weapon, but the fire might help give me some time if needed. My heart was pounding. The corridors were dark and gave no clue to where I was. I thought about the girl. Why had she taken me here? What do these people want from me? Would I see this girl again? Yes, you will see her again. That is where we're headed now. How did she know I was thinking about the girl? Could she hear my thoughts? Yes, I can hear your thoughts, dear one. And for the record, I'm not floating. I couldn't help but think this must be the worst power to have, to be able to hear people's thoughts. And I realized she'd be able to hear that too. I must try and not think. What comes next has to be reactionary and not thought out. I had to succumb to my highest power of feeling my way through this, using my intuition and keeping my mind clear. "Ah, good," she said. "You can keep your mind clear. This will help you, my dear. You are wrong about your highest power, though. This is yet to be found." "What do you mean?" I said to her, taking quicker steps as she picked up the pace. "All will become clear in good time." Time. Time, what time is it? Shh, we are nearly there. Just as she said that, her hands reached out in front of her as she held a speckle of light in her hand. I could see light peeking through the cracks of her fingers, just like I had experienced before passing out and finding myself in this unknown place. Suddenly, her fist opened to reveal a small ball of energy. It's light, a marble of energy, rotating slowly. I moved to see the side of the woman to see what was happening. The marble came to a stop, and the sound of a large metal door was heard. I presumed they opened as we proceeded to walk on. The old woman turned round to me and blew out my lantern. She plunged us into darkness. My knees bent a little, ready to fight. How am I going to see where I'm going? You don't need to see where you are going. You are all already here. She swapped the marble of energy into her other hand and threw it against the wall. The room lit up with the most beautiful colours. I felt like I was somewhere familiar. The walls were covered in orange, red, and yellow, flickering as though there was a fire being projected onto them. It was the eyes of the girl. Was I in the mind of the girl? The woman turned sharply towards me. Good guess, but no. Where on earth am I? Shh, she said again. Clear head, clear head. I must keep a clear head. Follow me, she said, and proceeded to walk up some steps that led to a circular platform in the middle of the room. She told me to stand in the centre. I looked at her, and she nodded, and I knew I had best do as I was told. After all, she was pretty much living in my head. I took slow, steady steps to the circle and onto the platform. The door began to light up. A bright, white light with tinges of blue swirled round and round. Keep a clear head, the woman shouted over the whooshing noises surrounding us. I approached the centre of the circle and took a deep breath, trying to control the speed of my heartbeat. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. And out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I closed my eyes as the light cocooned me. I felt stiff, paralyzed. Keep a clear head was all I could hear. Even with my eyes closed, I could see so many colours, white, blue, purple, green, gold, slithers circling me. It felt calming and protective. I surrendered to what was happening and went with the flow. I had no option, but I did not feel like I was in danger. Suddenly, the light seeped into my body. I could feel its energy in every part of me. I stayed standing for some time, observing the sensations within. I felt different, but still aware. I was no longer afraid. I opened my eyes, and there she was. She looked quite different from when I saw her in the rain and snow. She was radiant, with shiny, glossy hair compared to the dishevelled look I had seen before. Her dress was like something royalty would wear, deep burgundy colour with gold embroidered trimmings on the hems of her dress. Her face was radiant and warm with welcoming eyes. I am so happy to see you again, she said. Come, sit with me. I want to show you something. I sat cross-legged next to her on a big cushion that hugged my hips and legs. Everything here was exceptionally comfortable. She handed me a tiny vessel that held some liquid. "Drink it. It will help," she said, and guided my hands to my mouth. I drank the thick liquid. It was warm and sweet. She was right. I did need it. We sat in silence until I turned to her and asked, "What's your name?" She kept looking ahead and didn't answer. I felt that I wasn't supposed to be talking, but I couldn't help myself. "Where am I? What do you want to show me? What are you planning on doing to or with me? Why did you choose me? What happened?" She let out a big sigh. "If you are to learn, you must watch and stop asking questions. None of these questions are relevant. Your problem is that you think too small. There is a bigger picture to be considered." What is the bigger picture? I am in a room where light has entered my body for some reason, sat on a comfy cushion, drank something, sat pretty much in the dark in silence. What am I supposed to be seeing or asking? I know nothing. "Ha ha, precisely," she said, almost sounding pleased. "I know nothing. Watch now." The circle began to resonate and grow again, but it shot up as high as the ceiling and as wide as the room, showing a pale luminous screen. The images were blurry to start, but I recognized it straight away. It was my childhood home. I heard my mother's voice calling me for dinner. I stood up. I needed to watch this. I needed to see my mum. "Not now," she said, and the screen flickered through the entirety of my life. The mundane moments that I longed for, the horrific, the heartbreak I'd buried so deep. Everything was there. I felt exposed and naked to the point that I'd wished it would stop. But it continued. I didn't want to be experiencing all of this, especially in front of someone else. I was a loner and made myself a loner for a reason. However, I had to observe my life, unable to do anything about it. And eventually it stopped. I crumbled to the floor, broken emotionally, physically, and spiritually. I felt rage, and I just wanted to be left alone. "Why do you wish to be left alone?" I looked up to see she was gone. Relieved I was alone. I crawled back to the oversized cushion and curled up into a ball and looking where the screen was. I spent a long time staring into space, reeling in what I had just watched. I was alone. She left me in this strange place with nothing but my thoughts and memories. Why had she done that? Then I realized that she had responded to my wishes. So had every other person in my life, and I felt bitter about it. I did not want to be left alone. I wanted to belong. Another image began to appear. This time it wasn't my own life. It was yours. You were alone on the rocks and overlooking the sea, asking for someone to come and save, teach, and guide you. You needed me, and I knew what I needed to do. I had to find you, and we were to journey together. I was to be your master. I looked at Anya, and she was fast asleep. She never gets to the part where I get to tell her how I managed to leave the forbidden territory and why I was there. Maybe one day, she will stay awake long enough to hear this part. But our time is running out, and she will be moving on soon. We had been walking for days, each day getting longer as our strides became smaller and slower. Every night, Anya would ask for the same story and be asleep for the ending. She worked like clockwork. I was going to miss her. I had grown quite fond of her company. Our time together has been brief, but important. I realised that our relationship has been special, not just for her, but for me. She has taught me a lot about myself and how I can belong. I can help others, help them flourish with their confidence and their talents. A journey I prefer. Tomorrow, she will be setting off without me. I have prepared her for this, and I know she will prosper and continue to learn through her experiences. She will struggle at times, but don't we all? The part I find most challenging is knowing that I will never be able to see her again. I too must master the act of letting go and be fluid with the beginnings and ends of experiences. Perhaps an end is never really an end. It is a new beginning that continues.